Good evening to everybody. Thanks for clicking on to the final European outlook of the working week. It is Friday. It is the 8th of November, and we have, as always, here on the channel, a busy weekend coming up. The tropical outlook tomorrow, and then the live stream 7:30 p.m. this upcoming Sunday. I did happen to say in, I think, yesterday's video that the winter forecast would be released a week on Sunday. I'm talking absolute nonsense, by the way. The 24th of November is not a week on Sunday. I'm getting a little bit carried away and ahead of myself. So just want to reiterate the point. I think it's a couple of weeks on Sunday that the winter forecast will be getting released. You will be notified and reminded of it plenty of times before we get there. So I just wanted to clarify that little mistake that I made in yesterday's video. But I will leave a link in the description below for the live on Sunday night at 7:30. I think the next 3 Sunday nights is going to be a 7:30 time for the live. So I hope you can join me for that. Plenty of things going on at the moment here. We are continuing to watch this pattern change as we move towards the middle and second half of the month. There's still no guarantees of anything, I must admit, but based on the MJO progress, we're in phase 7 at the moment, or 8, I think it might be. Let me just double check real quick. Sorry about this. I should have been better organised than I am. Bear with a second here, everybody. Sorry. I'm not going to start this over again. It's Friday. It's been a long week. So, yeah, we're basically on the cusp of moving from 8 into one of the MJO. Remember what I said, 10 to 14 days after it moves into a particular phase. Sometimes we can get that response. Sometimes you get it quicker, sometimes you get it later. It depends on what is going on within the atmosphere itself. But generally speaking, we remain in this very, very monotonous, high-pressure, dull setup at the moment here. Notice here, this is the visible satellite imagery as the sun is now beginning to set to the east. Got this low-level, foggy, misty, cloudy conditions here. We've got the frontal system draped across Ireland. West of that, we've got much fresher, cleaner air. Eventually, what's going to happen is we're going to start to mix this atmosphere out a little bit and shake things up, hopefully trying to provide a little bit more in the way of sunshine. Up here across the far north, by the way, skies have been clear most of the day. Beautiful day, in fact. And the temperatures are now dropping pretty quickly. In fact, the temperatures here at Vogan Weather HQ are at, what are they currently sitting at the moment? I'm pretty sure they're quite low, 7.7. I think it was actually below that not that long ago. So temperatures are dropping under clear skies and light winds. And yeah, we are moving towards a shift, I think. Now, back in July, Magellan oscillation, teleconnection I use quite a lot. I quite like it. I think it's quite a reliable teleconnection for a good part of the time, but obviously there is aspects as well that that throw this out the window. When it heads into the null phase, for example, when you've got a strong ENSO, whether it be La Nina or El Nino, it tends to kick this out of the ballpark as well. Last year, for example, we did have a good MJO signal, drove both the warm spells as well as the cold spells, but then once the El Nino really got going, I think, grabbed a hold of the atmosphere over the Pacific, it really did drive the remainder of the winter, really from about mid-January onwards. El Nino really took over, and that is something that we need to take into consideration, that the La Nina is developing slowly but surely. Where that warm and cold waters sit will depend on various factors, including where the MJO goes as well. Bit concerned about how warm the Indian Ocean is at the moment here. I don't want to see the MJO getting stuck in phases 2 and 3 during the winter season. That tends to promote more of a positive Arctic oscillation, but more so North Atlantic oscillation. So it depends on where that La Nina and the coldest waters within the Pacific sit. But you can see here back in July, null phase. Then we had a phase 3, 4, and 5 during the month of August. We had a very positive NAO, AO situation here. Obviously, it's during the summertime, and the AO and the NAO behave differently depending on what time of the year it is. Then it moved into phases 7, 8, and 1. Those are promoting cold phases, so that's into the West and Central Pacific when you've got the rising motion, the upward motion, the convection, the heat release over the Central Pacific. That then affects the jet stream, the position, and the wavelengths of the ridges and the troughs. But generally speaking, we had a couple of cold episodes during the second half of September through the first half of October. Then it went back into phases 3, 4, and 5, which is Indian Ocean into the maritime continent. We've seen a very strong positive AO signal. Then we're now in the phases 7 and 8. And remember, we are still in phases 7 and moving into 8, eventually into 1. Those are cold signals. Now, we've obviously still got a mild pattern at the moment here, eastern North America, western portions of Europe here. But remember, there's the lag, 10 to 14 days afterwards. So, therefore, I want to show you this here of the GFS initial first. So this is the ensemble, by the way, looking over the Northern Hemisphere. This is something that I've been kind of beating the drum quite a bit recently because I'm starting to get a little bit more confident that there is a window. This isn't me saying that we're going to all of a sudden develop a cold pattern and then it's just going to stay cold. I'm expecting it to go mild once again after this pattern evolves. The MJO, for example, is expected to go through various phases, including back into warm phases once again. But this is, by the way, the ECM ensemble here. So this is the ECM WF long range showing the North Atlantic Oscillation trending negative here. Its initial is actually slightly positive, but it is expected to go into negative territory during the second half of November. The Arctic Oscillation 2 is positive. It kind of flirts with kind of neutral. Then it goes into negative territory, and quite a bit actually into negative territory during the second half of November also here. So the modelling is suggesting that this AO-NAO is going to go negative. Let's have a look actually at the GFS ensemble, see what it is showing the latest. So Arctic Oscillation, again trending into negative territory. The North Atlantic Oscillation 2 is trending into negative territory. But like I've already said, this isn't going to be a locked-in pattern. The MJO is in the move, on the move, and heading into the Indian Ocean once again. So I would expect to see heights coming back down to the north, up towards the north of the UK, up towards Greenland, within the Arctic region. I think we're going to go back positive in terms of the AO, NAO, and a mild pattern returning. But there's that period of about a week or 10 days where we may see some colder weather moving in. And this has been something that the models have not been showing during the back half of October, but this is something that has been built into my forecast. Overall, I've said that a milder and drier November is most likely, with a small window of potential for something colder, something more blocky, and that is getting shown now quite widely across the models. So you can see here, upcoming 5-day period, high pressure generally from the UK northwards up into Scandinavia. We've got high pressure over eastern North America, the trough to the east, in between the two ridges of high pressure either side of the Atlantic. Into the 6 to 10 day, here we can see the change. Now I want to draw your attention to the North Pacific. And this is something I've been saying. Negative over the North Pacific in the upcoming 5 days. Into the 6 to 10, you notice here that heights are starting to rise over the North Pacific. So that is showing us change in the ridge trough and the wavelengths, etc., etc. This is the 6 to 10. Notice here that we are now starting to see, with changes over the North Pacific, that is then change in the downstream pattern over North America. Then with that change, then there has to be a shift over the Atlantic, and that is pulling the ridge from the UK, from Scandinavia, west towards the North Atlantic, and then in the 11 to 15 day, it's moving up into the Greenland region here. So we've got the trough now starting to show up in the GFS ensemble over western areas of Europe here. We're also seeing a trough now starting to become established over the lower 48 of the United States as well. But look at this here. Not a hugely strong signal for a negative Arctic oscillation, if you notice here, because we've got negative heights over the Alaska and eastern Siberia area of the Arctic. Then we've got positive heights on the Greenland side of the Arctic here. So not a particularly strong signal for a negative Arctic oscillation, which is above average heights over the Arctic itself. And this is going to affect the stratosphere as well. We're seeing those mean zonal winds weaken, but they're then expected to become a little bit stronger once again. So that's the GFS ensemble. Let's have a quick look at the view for Europe and look at the temperatures. So bear with a second here. Upcoming 5 days, warmer than average, but you notice here that not quite as warm compared to what we've seen. But we'll play through the trend. You can see here it is turning colder than average. Let's have a look at the ECMWF extended. So this is the MJO, by the way. So we're in phases 8 at the moment. It is expected over the next 5 to 15, even 20 days or so, move back towards the maritime continent here. And therefore, I would expect to see the return of a milder pattern. So this is not me saying that all of a sudden we're going to have this super cold pattern that is going to lock in till Christmas. That being said, however, we may see a mild spell during the early portions of December, then something a little bit colder towards Christmas. We'll wait and see what happens. This is the surface pressure, by the way, upcoming 7 days. So we've got the very strong high pressure, as you can see here, strongest and largest area of high pressure anywhere within the Northern Hemisphere. There's that negative here from the central North Atlantic all the way up into the north of Greenland here. But if we play through this loop, watch what happens with the heights over the North Pacific. We're starting to see high pressure replace low pressure. Then we're seeing the ripple effect and the westward pull. Remember, this is the surface, not the upper levels at 500 millibars. But watch how this high over Northern Europe starts to get pulled west and north up towards Greenland here, and we're essentially reversing this pattern. Instead of it being a negative extended from the North Atlantic up towards the north of Greenland here, we've got actually positives. Eastern North America and Western Europe, we've got negative heights here. So this is the negative NAO pattern. But then if we play right the way through, notice here heights start to lower over the Arctic region, heights come up over the middle altitudes here. That is the MJO moving into the warm phases and changing the pattern yet again. So I think it's pretty clear to be seen what is going on here. Let's look at the upper air chart here at 500 millibars. So this is the current upcoming 5 days, or week, should I say, sorry. And then play through this loop again. Same idea. There's that west and northwestern pull of the ridge. We've got still positive heights over Eastern North America, but we've got Western Europe with low heights. Looking at Europe specifically for the same time frame, and that is a very different pattern to what we've got now. In terms of the temperature anomalies, we've looked at the GFS ensemble. Let's have a look at the ECM ensemble here and see if it is in bed with the GFS in terms of the temperature change to something colder. So initially, warm, upcoming 7 days. Play through the loop, and you can see here the turn to colder in day 10 through 17. Sorry, 17th through the 24th of November. Continue to play through the loop. You can start to see it warming up gradually, and that is something that I am expecting to see taking place. So, like I said, I expect to see a change in the pattern initially over the North Pacific, then eventually over the Atlantic and into Western Europe here. That westward retrograding high from Europe towards the North Atlantic up into Greenland here, but then a change back to something milder once again. Maybe not quite as mild as what we've got at the moment here. If we look at the records of coolweather.com, you can see here quite clearly that there is a lot of clustering of records or near records to the north of the UK, extending up over Arctic Scandinavia. We've also got some records across the southeastern United States. So it's going to be an interesting evolution of the pattern as we progress through the next wee while or so here. Looking finally at the 10 millibar mean zone of winds, and you can see here a very interesting little change now showing up in the model. So we're above average at the moment here in terms of the strength of the mean zonal winds. The stronger the winds, the stronger the polar vortex, and the milder the pattern is within the middle altitudes. The weaker those winds are, the less ability it has to contain that cold air. Now, what's going to be interesting here is the level of cold that we potentially see during the back half of November. It's still early. It's still subject to early season. It's not quite as strong as what it would be late December and particularly into January, early February. But the Arctic air has been building over the pole in the last few weeks because we've had a strong Arctic oscillation positive. That's meant that we've had a lot of mild air within the mid latitudes, and all that cold is bottled up over a region that has seen literally no incoming solar radiation now. So that pool of cold air has been gathering strength. With the weakness expected over the next couple of weeks, it'll be interesting to see how cold the air is as it descends into both Eastern North America and Western Europe. That is going to be interesting to see if it actually happens. But you notice here that the winds go below average and then slightly above average, but instead of it going up towards the record territory here, the ECM model is actually indicating that the mean zonal winds stay close to the average line. That thick red line is indicating the climatological average. And then it actually it starts to drop below average once again towards the 12th, 19th of December. Is that a hint of the MJO rotating back into the cold phases again in combination with this weakening? That is something to pay attention to, I think, and it'll be interesting to watch going forward. Let me finally have a look and see here at the current situation here. So we've got high pressure well out over Eastern Europe here, low pressure over the Atlantic, southerly flow. We've had this pattern for quite some time now, and with this pattern, we've got a lack of rainfall. This is the latest radar chart here. Looking at the latest temperatures of Meteoseo, you can see here that the temperatures are starting to drop under those clear skies. Even further south, we've got 6 to 8 9 Celsius across the board, so a little bit fresher compared to what it has been in recent times, a little milder if you notice here across Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland here. But playing through the loop of the GFS here, you can see that as we play through the course of the weekend here, we will start to see a little bit more southwesterly wind component here, northwestern UK, still relatively drab across the bulk of England and Wales here with very little to speak about. And then if you notice here, and the models are in pretty good agreement, that during the course of late weekend and into early and even mid next week, high pressure re-establishes from the Azores back towards the UK once again. Almost feels as if we're back to square one, but underneath this high we may have something a little bit clearer, mild by day and cold by night, with the frost and fog a problem likely underneath this rather strong 1040 millibar high seen by the GFS. It sticks around through a good chunk of next week, and then it looks as if we're starting to see a little subtle change. Notice this here, high shifts westwards, opens the door to an area of low pressure moving into Scandinavia, and then we may start to see something a little bit colder coming in. Now, we do have areas of low pressure trying to move in off the Atlantic, but as they do so, we may start to see the door opening up to something a good bit different to what we've seen in the last wee while here. Finally, I want to show you, there's no point in me showing you individual model runs of a particular thing, way out in advance in particular, because, you know, it's fantasy land, we know that. This, by the way, I showed you in yesterday's video, the probability of falling snow. This is off the GFS, not the operational, but it's actually off the ensemble. So this is all the model runs combined, and it's the probability of not lying snow, but fallen snow. And you can see here that we still have the model indicating an increased chance of seeing snowfall, particularly across northern Britain. But here, as we move towards the end of this run, you can see here that we are increasing that probability of falling snow going forward here. And with this pattern change, this is increasingly likely here. So I'm not wanting this to be clickbait. I'm not wanting to hype anything up. This has been something that I've been showing long before, talking about at least, long before the models did. And now essentially the models are now coming in line with my thinking based on the facts, MJO in the position it's in at the moment here. So this is not a wish cast. This is me looking at teleconnections, using that teleconnection and going, right, with a certain position, with a certain phase of the MJO, and a certain amplitude based on other aspects, this is a possibility, and this is exactly what appears to be starting to come into line. So I think I've spoken long enough. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and also if you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button as well. Lots more to come here on the channel this upcoming weekend, so stay tuned. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Bye for now.